Hey everybody, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I'm joined by Laurie Cunningham. How you doing, Laurie?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Laurie, can you tell us, you're an author with a plethora of books and comic books out there. Can you tell us about what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, I guess probably books and comic books. I'm a writer. I write kind of darker stuff, but like with dark humor as well. So you're not
Yes.
like
Yeah.
really like miserable reading your stuff. I'm the editor-in-chief for ASAP Imagination. So we put out a whole bunch of titles in an internet-connected universe, and we also publish other creators, and it's got a whole bunch of irons in the fire, basically, and whatever people want to know about.
Sounds like you're constantly staying busy. Do you find writing or now managing ASAP coming and taking up a lot of your time?
ASAP probably
Yeah.
does. Yeah, just because like I'm working with other people and obviously editing stuff, and we have people who come to us who've never made comics before or books before, so it's kind of walking them through the process, and like we're helping people set up Kickstarters and helping people find cover artists. So it does involve that definitely takes up a lot of my time, and I'm also a full-time mom. Like that's kind of like
Mhm.
my day job, my
Yeah.
unpaid day job. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I don't write as much as I want to
Hmm.
really anymore. But it's still fulfilling in other ways. And I'm I'm gonna be starting a YouTube show again, which I used to
Oh,
have, and then I
cool.
kind of let it go. So that's kind of more for art and to like kind of force me to read comics that aren't just submissions.
Yeah.
Because like again, when you run Kickstarters, I find that like especially when you're running them, like you're immersed in the world, so you like see everyone's, and you're like, okay, I guess I have to back. Not like you have to, but just
Right.
because you see them, you're more aware of them, and you're like, oh, normally I wouldn't impulse buy this, but like I've seen your campaign like 10 times, like on a tweet or a Facebook post or something. So I find you just shop more. So I have a whole bunch of comics I just need to read because I've backed them because someone had a cool concept, or they're just like genuinely a very passionate person. So I want to like kind of encourage myself to read for fun again. Not
Yeah.
that submissions aren't fun, but it's different.
It is different. I interview a lot of comic book writers, so there are a lot of comic books that come my way as well that are indie comics, and it's hard because there are some of those comic book writers that are like, I'm going to be putting out one a month. I'm like, that's amazing. But then there's
Yeah.
some of my favorites that come out like twice a year, and I'm like, it's too long for me to remember where this character was at. Mix it. So yeah, so much world building out there, and it's really cool, passionate group for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your work here today. We have Sister Grimm, and I want to also touch on Babies with Rabies, which is one of the best titles ever. It's a great thing. We're in the spooky season. We're into Halloween, so let's touch a little bit on Babies with Rabies first. This is an ABC guide, a survival guide, kind of a dark humor. What was the inspiration for this one?
Um, I have children. Basically, it was just I was living with my parents at the time because we were
Hmm.
renovating a house and it was too chaotic to have my daughter there. And then like it's kind of right around it was in the middle of COVID too, and we were just like joking basically in kind of dark humor about rabbit babies because my daughter was teething. And it just kind of like you start with like one letter and then you're like, oh, that would be a funny book. And then suddenly you have 26 letters and suddenly you're looking for an artist. And then suddenly you're like talking to printers in China. And suddenly you're telling everyone you have a book. So yeah, it's basically it went really far.
Yeah,
And now I have a little book and it's like a little kind of gift book, kind of like Go the
right.
F to Sleep. K is for knife ball, all those like pat the zombies kind of thing. Like I even have like a little like survival kit, but it's kind of like for new parents. That was kind
Mhm.
of the design of it. It's like a gift book, so it's hardcover and it's like it's got some shiny bits on it, and like yeah, it's just I wanted to make it like high quality, so it's a good gift. And then there's actually a little survival kit that comes with some bookmarks and stickers, but comes with teething rings and some ninja stars for the bathtub that I had made and all that stuff.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, it was fun.
I really like that it's aimed at new parents because I think that's such an isolating process sometimes when you feel like it's just you, your partner, and the baby, and like it is a survival process in a lot of ways, right? And so this kind of funny humor thing that's actually aimed at them, I'm sure is very welcome to surprise and gift.
Yeah, yeah, and I find that's like for me, I don't find parenting super easy. And there's days where you're like, do I either laugh or I cry? And like I think
Right.
that's kind of I would always prefer to laugh. So like
Mhm.
when you're like dealing with like little like feral monsters,
And you're
like
outnumbered sometimes.
yeah, and you're outnumbered, out completely outmatched, and all that stuff. Like yeah, it's nice to have like a little silly bit of humor and just joke about them being little zombies. And so yeah, the whole book is basically like a zombie survival parody guide. So it's like
Yeah.
the babies are the zombies and the parents are like the uninfected. And it's like there's a lot of like subtle references. And then it's also kind of full of like 80s reference. Like there's
Oh, I love it.
like I have like K is for Kevlar and it's like kind of like commando, and then like there's like M is for montage, and it's like I was like when I was talking to the artist, it's like you know in like all the Rocky movies when he's like climbing up the mountain and like boxing the like frozen cow carcass, like that stuff. We're looking for that stuff. So yeah.
How is it different working with an artist for something like an illustrated book versus your comic books?
It's not entirely different.
Okay.
I guess just like I think it's just like working with different people. Like people have different communication styles and preferences, and like like my artist on Babies with Rabies, like he was quite experienced and like to the some for a lot of things. Like I like would go to him and ask for advice. Like he's like has connections and stuff, and he like I'll just be like, hey, like do you know how to like get this into an EPUB? And he's like, oh yeah, you can do that. Like he like has like a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, wow.
Whereas like my artist on Sister Graham, like different kind of experience, but he was like brand new, fairly brand new to comic books. He was working on a comic book with his brother at the time when we first connected, but it wasn't published yet. So Sister Grimm was like his first published comic book. So he was like he's like, super talented, but like was fairly new to sequential art, and so it was like it was a little bit like not the blind leading the blind, but it was kind of like it was a lot more like playing off of each other. Whereas
Yeah.
like I feel like with like the Babies with Rabies artist, like I'd like would say a few things and he'd be like, yeah, like there was I feel like there's very few times where I kind of went back to him and like, okay, let's like do this. Like, yeah, it was just like a different experience. And neither was like better than the other. It was just different.
Yeah. How do you feel like that changes the way the work turns out when you have somebody who, is kind of like, give me the work and I'll be able to nail it. And also that collab partner in a way. How do you think that shapes the work?
I actually prefer it when I hey, like, how about this? And then they just come back and it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like, when I'm like have to have more input and stuff, then I like I'm a bit of an overthinker. So we're like, if they're like, oh, if they're like an art, like again, both artists would come back and be like, oh, what do you think of this? But like some things, like I'd like, I don't sometimes I don't want to have input, and but like it is fun. But like the comics also like with the book, like it's basically like that's one drawing per page, whereas like honestly like there's a similar amount of pages, like there's 26 letters and the comics are 22 pages,
Hmm.
but there's just way more panels, so
Yeah.
there's like way more to look about or look at. And then it's also like Babies with Rabies isn't necessarily like sequential. It's like they don't like this one page isn't like necessarily connected to the whatever happened in the previous page. Whereas again, with like comics, you're like, okay, like I'm telling a story, it's like action sequence, like it is a different way of telling it. Like I would still say picture books are like a type of comic in a way, like it's more just
Hmm.
like one panel per page. But yeah, it's just like it's like a different way to tell the story. So yeah,
Yeah.
like it's definitely like I said, different, but not like one's better than the other, easier. Like it's just you're always trying to find a way to tell a story and connect with your readers.
It feels like your working relationship with your artist is very important information for with your work on Apex or ASAP. I'm sorry, because your experience like across this gambit, I'm sure your artists kind of fall somewhere in there. Your writers that are coming to you, and so I'm sure you're very helpful for them.
Well, yeah, well, and that's the thing too. It's just like so other people come to us and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for an artist," and they're not necessarily working with either of the artists I've or like the artists I've worked
Right.
with. So I'm kind of like facilitating a relationship, and I know like people who've come to us with like a brand new script, I'll like look at it and like, okay, like you might not get a chance to talk to this artist face to face. Like maybe like write a little paragraph at the start. Like what's the mood? What's your theme? Whereas like some people come just with like a bare bones script. It's like, okay, well, fill it out a little bit because like what do you want to get across? Like, yes, an artist can draw this, but like they don't necessarily know what story you're telling just to see the script. Yeah. So it's kind of like, and to me, I think it's also like I'm not. I don't consider myself like an artist, like the comic book artist, but like I've done like a couple like commissions where I've had to like do something for someone and they've given feedback, and it's not like my favorite thing, but I was just like, but there's like I was like, you know what helps me? So I have like a little bit of that insight. Yeah. But
it's so valuable.
Like I don't like doing commission. I'd rather just like draw something and people like, I want that like straight up. Yeah. No changes. Like that's what I like. Not that I'm like a big like selling artist or anything like that, but like there's been a few people who've like bought my stuff. But again, like I find that's way easier when people just see what you like and buy it, as opposed to when you have to like work with people and change things and like they're like, oh, hopefully this is a quick fix, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to redo this whole thing.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. So like try to prevent that, because I've definitely like in the beginning, like I would same thing. I would like ask someone to do something and you're like, oh, I've combined all the layers, and like that's like
I felt that in my soul when you said that.
Yeah.
Do you know what merge down is? It's undoable.
Yeah. Never merge the layers.
Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, I've even done that with myself, where I'm just like, I merged something and I'm like, shit.
I need to walk away for a while.
Yeah.
Cardinal sin.
Yeah. I am 100% done. Damn it. I was not done.
Oh God, I feel that so much. With Sister Grimm, your big comic book that you're running here, it's a darker tone, I think, than Babies and Rabies, right? Are you trying to also introduce humor in this series as well?
The first issue, so originally I wrote it as a graphic novel, and then we decided to split into 4 issues. So like just kind of like the flow of it, I find the first issue is very melancholy and serious. And there's not a lot of dialogue. It's very like artistic and moody. But then near the end, I'm going to spoil a bit because like we're on issue 3. We have trading cards out there that says she's half Reaper. We have her like little sidekick is a ghost. But she meets her like kind of sidekick mentory character who's a ghost. And he's chatty. Yeah. And like he's kind of brings in the lightness because she's like, so the idea with her is like, she used to be a doctor. There was this big catastrophic paranormal event in an alternate London where she got separated from her family, and this big, awful, like physical encounter with death changed her. And then she wakes up 3 months later with vague memories, but she's like in a morgue and she doesn't really know what's happened. So it's very much like her dealing with like, what the heck, where's her family? Like, who is she now as a person? Because like, she has this ability to kill people when she used to save people. So she's very lost. Whereas like this like side character, Bennett, he like comes in and like he takes death with like this very like almost like self-sabotaging denial. So he kind of has like, he just like everything, he masks everything with humor. So it's like, yeah, he's like dead, but like he goes to the extreme, and like obviously like, so there's the dynamic where she's really trying to process things and he's just like banter. Yeah. Or just like annoying, like doesn't shut up kind of character.
Do you think, or are we going to learn that like Lily, I feel like very early on in her journey, right? And she probably will eventually get that jaded as well. Is it that Bennett has been doing it for so long that he has to kind of put that guard on himself to keep him whole?
It's like that he's been dead for so long?
Yes.
No, it's so like in the first issue he dies.
Okay.
So it's actually like, yeah, so it's like actually like, again, spoilers, but like it's not like a big surprise. But yeah, so it's like, so like he's kind of like, that's what I kind of say, like I would say like dealing it with like denial. And where I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, as she goes on, there's kind of like a flux where like, as she accepts who she is more, like there's room for lightness. And then like the longer he's in denial and is forced to like accept what's happened, and then there's a bit of a fall off for him. So like it would be a bit of a back and forth between the two.
when you're writing two different characters with such opposing personalities, how do you do that creatively? Are you trying to path out their emotional arcs long distance, knowing when one's going to ebb and the other one needs to flow?
Um, like there's like kind of a mix and stuff. I feel like it's a lot of it's just feel because like again, I don't want
Okay.
people to read this and then be like, this is so depressing. Where I'm just like, sometimes you get to a point where you're like, we need a joke here, or it's just like it's been a little too jokey. Let's like murder someone and make things serious.
The solution.
Yeah, this is a little too light. We need to murder some children or something. But yeah, that makes me sound so dark. But
It does.
but yeah, so it's like yeah, I think it's kind of a bit of a feel. But like in general, like it's a 4 issue arc. And I very much have a place where I want her to end, but it's like because it's 4 issues, it's like kind of subtle. And then, but the plan is to like once we kind of like you get to the end of issue 4, there's some catharsis. Like most of like some big loose ends are tied up. Like you could stop reading there, but the idea is to like kind of keep it going. So there's loose ends, and then so it's kind of like the longer we can go, and it's not like it goes indefinitely, but like there
Right.
are like certain events like in my mind if we get to them like they change her along the way and like if this happens she's like because she's very much torn between like her human side and her reaper side, so it's like if this event happens she like gets back some of that humanity, whereas like if this happens she loses some of the humanity to the reaper side of her again. So it's kind of there's lots of like things that can happen, and it's in like this like paranormal world, so it's like there's lots of things to play with, and we all have different titles, and at some point we could cross them over if we want to. The idea was like to not make it so like so you don't have to read every single title
Right.
to understand what's going on. So like you could just read Sister Grimm and just be like, this is the one character I want to follow. But you could read other titles and you kind of get like a better understanding of like the universe and like the world building and like what's all going on. And there's of course little Easter eggs here and there, like that kind of between the titles. But we haven't made it so like it's like in order to understand this, where it's like, oh, we have like this big storyline that happens over in this issue, but like the next issue in this series like references that and all these big changes, but like you haven't
Yeah.
read it. So the idea is not to do that. And like because like I came into comics like kind of late, and I know like I found it like very like into mainstream like DC Marvel like very overwhelming and like
Oh
where to
yeah.
start, to the point where like I kind of didn't start. I kind of just like I'm gonna stay over here in indie, but like
Yeah.
I've dipped a toe in, and people are like, oh yeah, you just like read whatever title you want, and like which I think is fine because like I guess I know like the general story of Batman and like the general story of Spider-Man, but like
Right.
there's all these like little like offshoots where I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. So I just found it like really overwhelming. And then like I came in and I'm like, I'm gonna read Batman. And it's like, yeah, it's like 80 years of comics. Like,
Yes.
no, I'm not. So that was kind of thing. And like at the start of all of our comics, we've started to put for people who can see, we have this like
Appreciate that
chronological
so much.
timeline. Yeah,
Yes.
so like if you because like I grew up like reading, I was more of a novel kid, so like if you
Hmm.
like you read book 1 and then you read book 2 in a series, whereas like comics was like just read whatever you're vibing with that
Yeah.
day. Unless I guess you're in manga, whatever. So yeah, we do have like a chronological like if you want to read these in the order that they happened, you can, but you can also, which again, I don't know if that helps people or it just makes it feel like overwhelming again, but
Well, it all.
ideally it's not
I think it kind
overwhelming.
of depends. When you're creating like Lily Connors, are you working on specifically wanting to tell her story, or are you first initially starting out with that world building and then placing your characters in the world?
So like so like when I started writing her, so we started off writing an anthology where there was basically this event happens and it was just
Hmm.
16 random people and it was their perspective of the event. And basically one of them accidentally turned into Lily Connors in a comic book. And like Hades, who's the owner of ASAP, he's like, yeah, you should write a comic book. Because my plan was to not be a comic book writer at all. And
Hmm.
I'm like fully in. But yes, but it was like this world that had already happened, and then all of a sudden I had this character. So like, but like the world was like there's room to grow the world in each of our titles. So like so we do like have to like check with each other and was like, did you do anything anything I should know about that? Like
Yeah.
especially like the titles are at different timelines, but some titles there is some like crossover in the timeline. So it's just like, hey, I like have this thing that happened. Like if that affects your character.
Yeah. There's a world changing event
You
going on
should
right now.
know.
Just a
Yeah.
heads up.
Yeah.
I'm
You know
making
how
a new
there's the
rule.
main event? There's also this other thing. We're even like it's not an I'm trying to think. I won't spoil that part yet. But there's
Okay.
something in issue 4 where I'm just like, yeah,
Yeah.
other people want to reference this. Like I have
Okay.
it written, but it's not like I don't. Issue 3 is not technically in anyone's hands yet, so I
Yeah.
won't go too far ahead.
So the first book, is that points of villainy, points of virtue?
Yeah, so so
Okay.
it started off with this like flip book anthology, which was like
Very cool.
written stories.
Hmm.
And then we started turning it because we're like a comic book company was what we began
Yeah.
with. We started writing, we took 2 stories from each, and then we started putting 2 stories in single issues.
Hmm.
And then we took 2 stories from each. So like people who can, and it's a trilogy, so people can do the math. There's 16 stories in the anthology, and there's only 12 stories in each of the issues once we're done. And then we've taken that and then we've turned it into this is the first graphic novel that we did. So it's like a collection
That's
of like
cool.
the 3 issues. And
Yeah.
so there's like points. So that was points of villainy, the complete points of villainy. And then we're going to take all of the points of virtue issues and make a complete points of virtue. And then the idea is to eventually get to that collector's edition where it's the flip book, but in comics as well. So
Yeah. Oh man,
yeah.
I'm such a trade comic book guys. We were talking about how everything's so daunting when that's the way to solve it, in my opinion, is you could just go with the trades because
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least
just put
it ends.
everything. Yeah. Well, it's like this is the order I read it in because it's glued together.
Yes, I can't mess this
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
That's great. So with Sister Grimm, you said you have the 4 here, and then is this kind of her origin story then, and we're going to just see her expand as a main character into other stories, or is she going to
Um,
expand in the world?
her origin story is a little bit in the anthology because that's kind
Okay.
of like her first appearance, but like, and then this one happens 3 months after. But this is actually more of like I feel like her origin story is missing a little because like you don't really
Oh,
know,
that's
you don't
fun.
really learn what happened during the event, just that something happened. Like you see it on face value, you don't get the why behind it.
Hmm.
And then like the comics, you got to get the 3 months after and her dealing with it. So the idea is that like eventually she would get through and you'd get some like answers on like why this happened to her or how.
That's so
It's
cool.
more of just that like that, you know, that it happened.
Yeah. And so we're gonna slowly pick it all apart as we go. Uh, when you're writing for Lily, is there anything that you're pulling from your own life when you're creating that character? It sounds like she's probably the character you're probably putting the most time into. Are you pulling from your own inspirations?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like you
that's
never
the
want to be
best.
the like Mary Sue kind of like thing, but it's just like she's like my similar age. She's
Yeah.
like I'm not a doctor, but she's like a mom and a wife, and like she's dealing with identity a crisis and stuff, like all of the things.
But those are the best stories. As a reader,
Yeah.
you could tell, right? It feels more
Yeah.
real when it actually comes
Yeah.
from.
If you read her and you're like, man, she's got some like really believable mental health issues. I'm like, yeah,
Hey,
I don't know why. I don't know why she had. They're
I'm
so
no Bruce
believable.
Wayne, but I'm on that board. I'm on board.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so after Sister Grimm and we have Lily going forward, are we going to be doing more comic books in this same world,
I think it's kind of we don't want to get
like
too far
spinoffs?
ahead. Like
Yeah,
obviously, like I think we want to do the thing where it's just like hey, like if people love certain characters, like yeah, of course that would be cool to follow Sister Grimm. But if people read that and they're like, I want to know more about Bennett, like I think
oh yeah,
we're flexible in this in that we could do titles like that. Like that's always kind of an option. Or if like we have a title that just like doesn't sell well, and people are like, no one connects. Like, who's the story for? We're like, you know what? Let's end it. Like,
yeah,
and that's kind of the thing with the 4 issue arc. Like, if we did, and even if it's not just people don't like it or it doesn't sell well, it's just if we're not passionate about it or whatever anymore, and just
yeah,
like, hey,
exactly.
there's a new shiny character over here. I want to go play with them. Like, we can do that, and like, but we don't want to leave readers hanging. Like, we want to like complete the arcs and actually have like a finish as opposed to just like issue two. You don't need any
Yeah.
more. So yeah, but there's like room to play and like follow different characters and create new characters and different titles. And there we also have like right now all of our titles, this event happens and it's like all these characters post event, but we also have this like whole pre-event scenario that
Yeah.
happened
That probably leads
because
to
it
an
was
event.
yeah and it was basically like before the event there was like more of the shining superheroes like the like golden age like
Yeah.
underwear over your tights kind of superheroes and whereas like we've gone like this event comes and like really messes people up and like
Yeah.
people die, they go missing, they go mad, they get captured and experimented on, so it's like this really like dark side of it, whereas before it was like kind of still like obviously bad stuff still happens, but it's just like da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Here I am to save the
Well, right
day.
away I'm thinking of the society that's in that world because you go from like seeing those, heroes in capes, and then all of a sudden like, why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you save us? Were they the cause of it? Stuff like that. No spoilers or anything like that. But then you go to a society that has to try to solve the problem themselves. And where are our heroes? And these new heroes have to rise that are not perfect and are a little bit closer to home. That's just a cool world you want to dive into. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So yeah, like the planet, like as long as we can do this, the plan is to keep adding more stories and titles and keep the ones we love going forward and stuff. But of course, it's just like we're only so many people. There's only so
Yeah,
much time and different life happens, business happens, like all kinds of stuff. So it's kind
of
of just
course.
they're keeping flexibility, but at the same time, we want to be true to fans and not really disappoint a whole bunch of people and just end stories. Like again,
Yeah.
people might be disappointed if like we decide to like end it after a story is done. We're like, no, you're not making any more issues. I'm like, that story is done.
That's the
But
nice thing with the 4 issues. It's so manageable that like you still get that complete story. That's the key. That you're not
yeah,
nobody's being left hanging. That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, if people want to follow up on this, are you guys releasing kind of behind the scenes stuff, or at least teasers of what's coming up, things like that?
Yeah, so everything is on asapimagination.com.
Okay.
We have social media all over the place, and Hades has done a good job of keeping it consistent across all the platforms. Like my handle is different on every single platform because I play it hard to get. But yeah, so you can follow stuff and like we have like plans to make a newsletter, but like a lot of our stuff is just social media updates and like
Yeah.
Kickstarter updates, and so like we try to keep people
Informed.
up to date about updates.
Yeah.
I feel had that cheeseburger definition there. I'm like, we update people with the updates. Update, update,
Speaking of
update.
Kickstarters, do you have a current campaign going?
So ASAP does actually ASAP has a couple. So like
Okay.
so one of them we're publishing, it's called Pawn Bros. It's like the sci-fi 80s wrestling one, which is like basically these like wrestlers get abducted by aliens and forced to fight in the Intergalactic Wrestling Foundation. So yeah, it's super fun and it's live right now. Some of the people, so we have the Anyone World, which is people we publish, but it's also people we distribute. So like it's a lot of
Yeah.
people who publish their own stuff, but we like do digital distribution. So there's at least two. I know End of Zed is up there.
Yeah.
And oh, the name of one of them is escaping me, but like the author is David Taylor.
Hmm.
And then there's another creator, Morgan Quaid. I think he always has a Kickstarter going on. And then we have two more publishing up. There's another wrestling sci-fi one where it's more like the aliens coming to Earth and then the like these like retired wrestlers have to like save the world kind of thing. And then we have like a kind of like a neo-noir one that's coming soon as well.
Oh,
So
I'm such a sucker for those. Yeah.
so yeah, keep an eye on that one then.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So ASAP Imaginations, guys. Sounds like you gotta go shopping. The links will be in the description for all of that. So make sure you guys follow up on those. Um, Laurie, this sounds like such an amazing world to dig into, and I can't wait for everybody to follow along and check it out. Again, we're gonna have all the links to ASAP Imagination, but also to the socials so they could get those updates as well. Laurie, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, make sure you follow up on everything, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.